And when we looked at that, you looked at the whole issue of structure around two dimensions. One is uh, how do we maintain the ethic of entrepreneurship in the organization, because obviously with growth you're going to become big, unwieldy, and you need to put in processes and discipline in place. And how do you make sure that that culture of discipline also exists? And in fact, there's a very interesting interplay of these two elements. If you have a strong culture of discipline and low entrepreneurship, what you're creating is a hierarchical organization, which is relevant in some environments. For example, maybe the military. It works very well in that environment. On the other hand, if you have uh, a high or a low ethic of entrepreneurship and low discipline, you're creating a bureaucratic organization. If you have a high degree of entrepreneurship and low discipline, that's typically an environment in a startup, right? But for great organizations, you need to have both a high, I would say, culture of discipline as well as a high ethic of entrepreneurship. And I think that is where most organizations struggle, and it requires considerable amount of management will and effort to make it happen. Uh, there are many processes that need to be put into place to support that. Perhaps I will let the other panelists talk about their views before I share my views about some of these processes.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Arvind. I'll be very keen to explore what processes you actually put in place, but perhaps we'll give the other panelists. Kamal, you come with a similar sort of background. Perhaps you can outline your views on this issue.
Okay, I'm actually going to, thanks Angle, I'm going to actually share my experience in Birlasoft, where we have grown from a 400 people organization 5 years back to now a 4,000 people organization. So what exactly happened? How did you manage the growth over the last 5 years? And for us, there were 3 things which were very critical. One was culture of the organization, second was people, third was processes. We just focus on 3 things: culture, people, and processes. How did we bring about a culture in the organization? And mind you, for us to bring in where you are hiring a lot more people than what are existing in the org, it's a huge effort to maintain your culture and keep the whole org binding to that culture. So what we did in the first case was, in fact, to have a workout where we had a belief session, okay? Belief is like behavior in action. So we said, we got the senior leadership team and the middle management team, we said, you guys tell us what is the organization today? How do we work? What are our belief system? And we had record sessions and we all came out with what the organization looks as of date. And then obviously they were not happy with what was actually coming out. So we said, tell us what should be the go-to belief system. And then we all together created what is a go-to belief system. And then the next thing was, so we had a mind from all the people in terms of what is the belief system. And some typical things like we had earlier, things like people would play a blame game, very typical. You have a problem in sales, it'll be a delivery problem. Your delivery this, it's a resourcing problem. You go to resourcing, it's an HR, so you go round and round. So one of the beliefs was, we do not play the blame game. So like that, we built a culture where people were on a system which was the right culture, the right belief system for the org. The next challenge for us was to take this system across the organization. It's a big challenge to what you do in a breakout session, in an offsite workout, but how do you then take it across to 2,000, 3,000 people? So that was an intense campaign we launched across the organization where I would personally get involved in covering what are the belief systems. It became part of our induction toolkit. So with that, we made the culture as part of the DNA of the organization. Second thing is for us people. People, it's a cliche to say that people are the most important assets, but it is very true. You have to have good people. If you don't have good people, then you just can't move forward. So we took a lot of care in building, getting people with the right passion, energy, and commitment levels. And there were development plans around the people. There were also along with that, what goes is the weeding out of people who are non-performers, people who are non-believers. So that's the way we address the people issue. Third thing is very critical for us, processes. Processes are again very critical and they transform the organization from a people-dependent to a scalable, process-dependent organization. And a lot of work we did in terms of creating processes, whether there are front-end processes or back-end processes, and digitizing all the processes. And we still have some work in progress where we are creating an execution framework, which is kind of being a governing process on top of the front-end and back-end processes. So in a nutshell, 3 things for us, which have been our learnings: culture, people, and process. So you do it right, you build a scalable, growing organization.
Thanks, Kamal. That was very useful. Som, you come from a organization which has a very different background to Kamal and Arvind. What is your perspective on this issue?
Well, I've worked for companies that have been aspiring to be global and a company which is global. So I've seen it from both sides, and probably some of the things I might mention here may be a little controversial or maybe provoke some discussion, and that's the objective. I think it's more for our own companies here, which have been growing at about 30–40% per year. It's a huge growth. And mind you, 80 to 90% of our resources are here. So while we say we really work in a global environment, but tomorrow we're going to be global, and I think the challenges when we become global tomorrow is going to be very, very different from what they are today. So Kamal mentioned about how he manages, cultures here, but just imagine if you had another 2,000 people in China working for you or somewhere in Latin America, right? How are you going to take the culture that was so dear to you here in those places? And that takes us to this discussion about, organization structures. And, it's always amuses me that there are how many books written about structures and so on. And mind you, there are only 3 elements to it. It's either business vertical, it's country and geography, or it is functions. Now you can go play around with these 3 horizontal, vertical, matrix in whichever manner you want to. The problem that we always face and see is that as you are, say today you are a Bangalore-centric company or a Bombay-centric, and you start expanding, and if you ask this guy back in the US, he will always tell you that this, we have a very Bangalore view or a Mumbai view, just like I would hear in my company saying we have a Palo Alto view or a Menlo Park view or a Redwood view, right? So mind you, it's an important point to say that as you become global, as more and more of business is not in your own country, you have to change the way that you perceive what the globe is. And the moment you work away from headquarters and the more distant you are, the question comes on how do you trust people? Because the further you are, if I'm operating in 170 countries, you can't say I've got 170 country managers and I would trust the finance, HR, everybody there because he will just follow, so you put controls. So I think the market is growing. What the bottleneck is us, right, who would then put processes, etc., which slow you down. So while there is an external push and drive and market-driven drive and capital market drive to grow, I think it is the internal processes which slow you down because people disempower themselves because they got to go and check.
Sure.
So a guy for an Indian company working way back somewhere in the US or Japan would think that's important for him to check with headquarters. And then there's a big process because he doesn't know where to go. So I think we tend to slow that down. And hence I would say that the kind of people that we need are a change in our whole attitude about saying, are we truly global? How many times do we get a message saying, get onto this call, and then somebody realizes, oh, it's 2 a.m. in India, and maybe it's an odd hour in New Zealand or whatever, and how do you get 6 people to speak to each other when they are in 24-hour stuff, and how sensitive are you going to be to it? And hence I would think that we always have to give a fix-it too. You can't just talk about a problem. And I believe that just like we have customer advocacy in our companies and we have employee advocacies in a company, I think there is somebody, and our culture should be also of global advocacy. Somebody who says, hey, this is not going to work there, right? It works here, but this doesn't suit that particular culture, right? Are we sensitive to, and it's Chinese New Year coming around, so if you go to Asia Pacific, you'll find the work just stops. Then if it's US, it's Thanksgiving. If it's India, it's either one festival or the other, and the world still goes on. And how are you going to match all this? And you do find that there is need, right, for us to change our mindset. And hence, it's very, very important. If you look at our companies, our pyramid used to be like this. And as we've expanded to 40% growth, the pyramid is like this. So we have a very thin edge of managers around. And how do you get them to think globally?
Sure.
So to me, if we have to be talking about this growth, I think we have to take away the bottlenecks that we are creating ourselves, which slow us down.